welcome to the Victorious Living Solutions podcast. I'm your host, Nikeya Young, and we are so excited about this episode. We have a very important guest in the studio with us today, and that is none other than Nikita Lawrence. Hi, Nikita.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm so excited about this opportunity and this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. You guys, Miss Nikita has a lot going on here. Let me get into this bio, and then we're going to jump into this very important episode. So, Nikita Lawrence is a best selling author, motivational keynote speaker, and CEO of Wealth Success Chamber Enterprises, LLC. She helps women and entrepreneurs learn how to maximize their potential, multiply their impact, and maintain a thriving, purpose filled career while living a meaningful life. In 2020, Nikita founded the Wealth Leadership Academy, a global online school to serve women trailblazers who desire to change the world. They learn how to awaken their gifts, ideas, expertise, stories, and strategic business solutions to achieve self mastery. They discover their inner wealth, build their financial wealth blueprint, and become their best self to experience joyful abundance. Nikita is on a mission to show 1 million women all around the world how to ditch burnout, get unstuck, find their inner wealth, discover their purpose, and unleash their God given gifts to change the world while experiencing success, wealth, and harmony on their terms in life and work. Lawrence has been featured in Forbes, HuffPost, Reich, Reader's Digest, Thrive Global, and several other publications. She has published 14 journals and 5 books, including Wake Up Your Gift of Wealth, Bye Bye Burnout, She Decrees, Win the Day in 90 Seconds, that is, Amazon bestseller, The Secret of the Wealth Success Chamber, the I Am Wealth Journal, and more. Told y'all, she got a lot going on. She's a dynamic woman of faith who resides in Illinois and enjoys spending quality time with her daughter and husband. Apply for your free coaching session today and learn more about this dynamic woman at www.nikitalawrence.com. Yay! Yeah. All right. So today's episode, we're titling not how to, avoiding a toxic workplace culture. So we're titling it Avoiding a Toxic Workplace Culture. So let's get into it. Miss Nikita. You guys, another thing we have to mention, she's been working in consulting, HR, leadership coaching. So she has a lot of experience helping people to develop their workplace culture. Okay. So, first question I have for you is, what are some of the most commonplace problems in the workplace?
Oh my gosh. So I started my career in HR in retail,
Mhm.
actually. And so in working, I've been in retail, I've been in hospitality or food and beverage, I've been in tech. And what I found in working in many different with many different teams, in different roles or capacities of HR, is that the issues really are the same. Like no matter what industry that you're in, whether you're in, a corporate setting or you're in, a field-based position. I've also worked as a regional employee relations director, where all the issues that was exclusively what my role was. And so I found that no matter what the industry is, the issues typically are the same. And so it may be things like, poor leadership with managers who are managing people. It may be lack of development, people that are put into roles too soon before they're actually able to really be successful. It could be a lack of emotional intelligence, okay, where we got people that are expected to lead and interact with others, but they have no idea how they're being understood, and how to respond well to situations that happen. Um, it could also be so I did some work years ago where in one of the roles I was in, we had a huge issue with turnover. And a part of like we were spending a lot of money on just turnover cost. And so our role was to get to the bottom of that and to see how we could positively have an impact on retention efforts within our territory. And so I found that some of the reasons for burnout included um, lack of manager support,
Mhm.
lack of the proper tools and resources, um, lack of an opportunity for growth, so career opportunities. It could be lack of just engagement with their manager, where someone has been hired and they just don't see the manager. Like they don't connect with
Mm.
them. There are not one-on-ones. There's no, you know, no
Wow.
guidance, no presence,
Yeah.
a couple of other things. And so many of the many of the issues that happen in workplaces are avoidable.
Yeah.
And I found that, some of the common things that we see are those, right? That I've just shared with you.
Very good. So, yeah, highly avoidable. I've heard a lot of people talk about how much it costs to train new employees. So, you would think that companies have a vested interest in keeping the employees that they have. But it's so weird to me how someone who is not an effective manager, who is a tyrant, who no one likes, or who berates their employees, or just, just some kind of something is off with this manager, is usually allowed to stay in their position for so long. And I'm sitting here thinking, why is that? Why do you think that is? That companies would rather hemorrhage employees, like water, than to get rid of a toxic manager or a manager who isn't qualified or whatever the issue may be.
So those are that's a layered question, right? And pieces. I think from when I worked in retail, I found that I had a territory of a number of different stores within a certain geography across multiple states. And what I found was that in being a part of this, like, executive team or this escalated team, many of the employees felt like we knew all of what was going on. And
Mm,
we knew that leaders were a certain way or being a certain way. And in many cases, there were some things we may have been aware of, but to the extent of what was actually going on, we were not always even aware. And so, one of the first
mm,
things I say to employees is don't assume that your management team is aware of all of your grievances or what's really going on if you have not spoken up first.
got
Because what happens sometimes is that there can be this assumption that, well, they know that Johnny is acting a fool. And
it.
maybe they know Johnny has made some poor choices, but have no idea the fullest extent of what Johnny has been doing that's
Mm,
contributing to a toxic work environment or a negative experience for employees. And so, one of the first things to always do is to make sure that if your many workplaces have an open door policy. And what that means is that, you can go to a supervisor or to HR to express the concerns. Now, with that, often there can be a hesitation because of a fear
mhm.
of retaliation.
Yeah.
And well, Nikita, if I go to use my open door, what's going to happen to me if y'all don't get rid of this person and I still have to work with them? And so there are
Mhm.
typically different policies and procedures or ways to handle um, those situations so that it still is protective for the work environment and for the employee. But companies handle those within like the sphere of their HR system or their HR practices. And so on the other side of it, just because a manager has made a mistake or done something wrong, it doesn't mean they'll automatically be fired. And I found that many employees will sometimes assume that nothing is being done because that leader has not been fired. And there are many different stages of discipline or accountability that will happen with leaders that, make mistakes or just flat out have done things that are wrong. Sometimes they're categorized. Other times it could be that um, you have companies that do want to try to not do the right thing, right? And
Yeah.
and they want to issue a level of discipline that's not appropriate for whatever the behavior is. I've seen many different examples of both, but in most cases, I found that most employees are feeling as though the company has done nothing because that person wasn't fired, and that's not true.
Gotcha.
It may have been that they were disciplined, it could be that they were retrained, it could be that there are other things happening behind the scenes that employees are not aware of. Now, what I have challenged my managers on is that let's say I have a senior leader who has a manager who has done something wrong and
Yeah.
employees are complaining about it. And they issue discipline and the employee is still complaining. Like, ain't nothing changed. And then the manager says, well, we can't disclose what level of discipline has been issued,
Yeah.
but we're handling it. What I'll challenge that manager on is to say, listen, you need to make sure this behavior is not continuing because if we issue discipline or if we issue whatever accountability to correct the behavior, but it's still going on, that's your problem. It's not just that your employee is saying we want you to tell us what you did. They want this stuff to stop. And if
Right.
it has stopped, then it needs to continue to progress or look at alternative methods to resolve whatever that situation is.
Yeah. Good. Awesome. Now, are there ways for employees to express concerns anonymously? Because I know that is a big thing. Like, if I say something, I'm going to be the one, all the higher ups, they all stick together. It can be a very them versus us kind of culture in a lot of these workplaces. So, do people have ways for anonymous reporting?
So there should be, it just depends on that company's process, right? But every
Yeah.
company has a way for an employee to air whatever their concerns are. Sometimes they're less visible or they're not as clear as they need to be. And so I think the best thing to do is to first contact HR to find out what is the process
Yeah.
to express a concern, whether it's with their supervisor or with someone else that they're interacting with. And then to also ask that question, what is the process to express this concern anonymously? Many
Yeah.
companies will have an ethics hotline where you can call the number and you can request to remain anonymous. Now, the the one piece around being anonymous is that because I've done many investigations. And in being anonymous, you also still have to, the company has a responsibility to get to the facts and to make an appropriate decision on how to resolve that concern. And if that employee is remaining anonymous, then sometimes it can be more challenging to, I'd say, it's really substantiate or unsubstantiate the facts of what has taken place. And
Yeah.
so it's one of those situations where yes, you can be anonymous, but you also want to make sure if it's something that you just want people to be aware of is one thing. But if you want there to be a resolution, then you may at some point have to, get involved. And you can even also request, hey, with this particular role I'm in or this situation or environment, I don't really feel as though it's allowing me to produce my best work, or maybe I don't
Yeah.
really feel safe. So, can I be reassigned? That's also an alternative or an option that sometimes is available that I've seen employees don't always explore in
Mhm.
getting into a different space and or into a better situation for them personally.
Got it. Now, the guy that we talked to earlier in the season, he mentioned that he did just that. So he said, hey, but now this is the caveat to his story was he wasn't a regular employee. He was contracted
Okay.
by the company. And so he said, let me just go work with someone else at the company. And there was another person in another department that said, "Hey, we'd be happy. We could use your help over here instead." And
Mhm.
he was like, "Great." And that was it. He finished out what he had to do for, the toxic employee. He went to go work for another department and everything was going great. But then the toxic boss from the first department got angry because he left and started all of this stuff, retaliation against him for leaving because she felt that it made her look bad that he was going to another department, which he didn't put her on blast. He just moved. He could have said a
Mhm.
lot, but yeah. So what do you do when something like that happens? You just say, okay, I'll just go work somewhere else. And then, you have a narcissistic boss that wants to destroy your reputation within the whole company. Like, oh, if they don't work for me, I don't want them to work anywhere, kind of thing.
So what I think about that, and just I don't have all the information, right? I just have what you just shared with me. So I'm sure
Yeah.
there's more to it, more pieces, nuances that I don't have to explore right now. But I would say that if you have a leader who you believe is intentionally trying to damage your reputation or
Mhm.
negatively impact your ability to work in an organization, and you have gone to HR maybe once, and then with this example being
Mhm.
reassigned, and then things are continuing to happen,
Mhm.
then the next step is to continue to follow up again, to not sometimes sometimes I think we can be like, oh, I told them what was going on. I already went through that process. And there is an emotional toll that is
Mm.
taken anytime someone has to bring up the courage to even give expression that something is wrong. Right.
Yeah.
And so, but if something is still continuing, then you have to still either go to that person's supervisor, or if the HR department is not necessarily responding, or if they haven't connected those dots, you can continue to use that open door, to reach the level of leadership that can actually resolve that situation.
Yeah.
Or there are some people take legal action,
Mhm.
um, and some people decide that, what, the culture of this company doesn't feel aligned to my values because
Yeah.
this is continuing to happen. And sometimes the issue is a particular manager. Other times the issue may be the actual workplace environment and culture that allows certain things to happen. And so I think for anyone that's listening, that's questioning whether or not they're in a toxic work environment, or they have, a leader who's not great. Like, I've worked for amazing leaders, and I've also worked for leaders that were not great at all.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you have to decide, that you are going to be the CEO of your career. Like, you're going to be the leader of your career trajectory, and no other person can decide how far you go. Whether you are an employee at whatever company you're a part of, or you decide you want to be an entrepreneur, no one gets to decide where you're capped. And if a workplace has allowed a person to keep you limited, then you should explore other opportunities, because, we are people of faith, right? Like, God didn't
Mhm.
create us with all of this talent and skill and experience and all these gifts for some man or woman to try to
Mhm.
stifle our progress or our success. And so I think some of the hardest decisions are making a decision to leave an organization after experiencing what felt like, an environment that was not supportive, or maybe
Yeah.
um, challenge your confidence, or
Mhm.
challenge even how you see yourself. Because when you're in an environment that is not supportive, or you have a leader who's negative, it can negatively impact how you see yourself, and that is one of
Yes.
the dangerous things. And so I would say to anyone who is feeling as though they may be in this spot, or that there's room for them to do more and they're not getting the support, go through the avenues, go through the channels within the organization. And if you're not satisfied with those, or you believe that there's more for you, explore your options, explore them,
Mhm.
because no one gets to decide that you're capped in the capacity you're in today, or you're forever subscribed to an environment that may emotionally just be unhealthy for you in the season of life that you're in.
Absolutely. I love the way you said that you are the CEO of your work experience. I love that. Love that. Love that. I believe that during the pandemic, that is what a lot of people, conclusion a lot of people came to. And then we saw the great resignation. So where are we with that? Do you think we're coming about to the end of that whole great resignation thing, or is it still happening just as much as it was at the beginning? Where do you think we are? About halfway through or about the same?
That's a good question. I would have to do more research on what the numbers are today. I
Mm.
know there have been more conversations about layoffs than there
Okay.
have been about this great resignation. And I
Yeah.
think that a lot of them, A lot of what we saw before was just people realigning themselves to what their values actually are, as opposed
Mhm.
to letting companies dictate what their quality of life and what their values should or shouldn't be. And
Yeah,
so we've seen people leaving jobs either that they were underpaid or underappreciated or lack of flexibility to find roles or opportunities that gave them more of what they needed. And so now, where we have all of these layoffs, where there have been quite a few layoffs in specific industries based on, the economy and where we are, we
yeah.
also see other companies that are still hiring and that are doing well and that
Mhm.
are looking for really great people. And so I think it's just a time where I always say for people who are in job transition or who are thinking about what's next for them to one take a step back and to think about, what do you believe your purpose is.
Mhm.
Like whenever you're in the middle of a transition, it's important, I believe, to really take a step back and to get clear about what you believe your purpose is, and from
Absolutely.
there then get clear about your vision, and then think about the type of work you want to do or the type of skills you want to build in this next phase of your career, and then seek out opportunities, whether they are new industries, new roles completely, or very much in alignment with the work that you've done before that can fit the mode of what you need in this season, not just a certain title or a dollar amount of a salary, or really be thoughtful about what you want to learn, what skills you want to build that long term connect to your career plan.
Absolutely. Now, you guys hear everything she said. That goes a lot further than just, I'm trying to do this position to make XYZ amount of money. Like your work, because you spend so much time at work, I feel that it should be something that you truly are passionate about. A place where you feel a sense of joy to go and do this task every day. You don't feel dread when you hear your alarm clock ring. Like you're excited to go and do the thing. I mean, that's my personal take on it. What do you think about that?
I agree. And I about like the scripture that says joy in sorrow. And I think about how you can be in a role that you are passionate about, that you feel joyful in, but you still have a level of stress that you experience. Now, you're paused on my screen. Can you still hear me and see me okay?
I can see you, but you're paused on my screen. So I
Okay.
can hear you fine, but for some reason you're paused on my screen. Oh,
Okay.
there you go. I don't know what happened, but we're back in business.
Okay. So I'll start over from the beginning of that.
Okay.
What were we talking about though? Remind me what the
Oh,
purpose of this
so
conversation
we're
was.
yeah, we're talking about just like how you should be excited to get out of bed and go, do what you do every day, or else why
Yes,
are you doing it? Yeah.
yes, absolutely. So work is work, right? And
Mhm.
from the time that we are born to the time that we leave this earth, we'll be working at something.
Yeah.
And so I believe it's important to understand how you're wired, like what your natural design is, what your natural proclivities are, because that, for example, if I'm someone who let's take the DISC, the
Mhm.
DISC assessment. If I am a high I, which I am, but I'm in a role that calls for a high uh, C or a high S, to come forth. And I am not strong there. If I've built a career that demands a skill set or a natural proclivity toward a certain demeanor that I don't possess, I will be unhappy.
Yeah.
And so I think it's not just about like a bad boss or a workplace culture that is unhealthy. I think it's also about making sure the role that you've chosen, the path you've chosen, is in alignment with who you actually are so that you don't feel like you have to pretend to be someone or
Mhm.
you're caught up in imposter syndrome because
Yeah.
you believe you'll be found out for being someone that you're not, because maybe it's actually not who you really are designed to be. I think, and sometimes with feedback, I think being in a work environment, even those that are tough, like you can be in a role that you were created to be in that aligns with your strengths and your talents and your personality and the way you're wired and all of that, and it still be tough some days, and you still have stress because of new experiences that are maybe putting a demand on your potential. And so I
Yeah.
think it's important to understand, even in one, that you have to identify who you are, but two, you can be in a great role and still not necessarily wake up like, it's time to go to work today, because maybe there's a big presentation that you have, or there's a task that you're being asked to do that you've never done before. And
Yeah.
so being able to sort through those things to determine, is this really unhealthy, or is this something new that I haven't done and I'm a little afraid that I'm going to fail?
Yeah.
Or is it that this thing that I'm doing is misaligned to who I am, and like it's suffocating or really stifling my ability to really be at peace
Yeah.
in my workspace? Being able to decipher through all of those are important, which is why I think coaching, being a coach like you are, is so important. Being able to also have a therapist that is qualified and capable to help you really think through and unpack what you're feeling and how you're processing things matters so much, because if you
Yes.
only are in environments where you're comfortable, where every day feels like it's sunshine, you know, flowers blooming, like that's cool, but I would challenge, are you growing? Like, are you
Yeah.
have you limited your ability to grow because you just wanna be comfortable? And
Yeah.
when you are growing at the to the degree of your capacity, it is uncomfortable. And so being able to decipher between joy and happiness and comfort and growth, and all of these pieces together, it takes more than just one person being in their own, head or in your own mind trying to figure it out alone.
Yes. Very, very good points. I feel that everything you said is so spot on because when you don't take the time to really do some self reflection and tease things out like this, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you could be the toxic person. You could be the toxic person because you are looking for this job to you maybe you have unrealistic expectations for what this job is supposed to be. You're trying to make the job fit into a box that it just doesn't fit into. And so it's important that we look at things as they are, not as we wish them to be. So I
Mhm.
love everything that you said
That
about
is so good. Oh,
go
man,
ahead.
you just I've look what you just said. It's important to see things as they are and not how we wish they were. Like, that
Yes.
is so important. And something that I've had to learn was that, like, we're in a day and age where, there's so many people who are awakening their gifts and their expertise and their skills into entrepreneurial lanes. And so
Yes.
we have, people who are side gigging, and who are part-time entrepreneurs, and just a whole lot of stuff in between, contractors, freelancers, while working
Mhm.
something full time. And I used to believe that that your passion, whatever you're passionate about, you can make, or you should be able to make a full-time income in that thing.
Yeah.
And but today, I would say everything is not supposed to be monetized. Everything
Hmm.
is supposed to be monetized.
Hmm.
You monetize as much as you could, but I would ask you, do you have joy and peace? How are you feeling after going that route? And I
Yeah.
think it's okay to keep things that you're passionate about, that are connected to your purpose, as that. And
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be monetized for you to feel um to make you feel more worthy, that
Mm.
this is the thing that you're being called to do. I believe there is a space where your passion and your purpose and your skill set can all connect, and that is, producing an income that provides the level of lifestyle that you desire. However, I don't believe that it needs to be all in this one bucket, or that people should just be pursuing this idea that whatever you can do, find a way to monetize it and you'll be happy. No, you won't. You
Mm.
you may have a few more dollars, but you may also that may lead to more burnout, or to
Yeah.
you trying to figure out what really matters most. And so I think being able to understand that work, there's a book, and I haven't gotten through all of it. Um, I will share this with you after. after the show, but there's a book that talks about this. And the writer spoke about how, work is work, and how
Mm.
you can have a space where you're working in a capacity not that's negatively impacting you, right? Or that is toxic and all of these things, but you can have a space where you're working to work to make sure that your livelihood is provided for, your bills are taken care of. And then you can also have a space where you explore your hobbies, your interests, your passions, and you do that, and maybe that's monetized or maybe it's not, but when you put those together, maybe you feel whole and healthy and peaceful and sound because you're contributing, you're connected, and you are, continuing to do something that allows you to have the lifestyle that you desire.
I love it. I love it. Now, before we get off, we have to touch on this because we kind of brushed against it a little bit, but a lot of people, let's demystify something for our listeners right quick.
Okay.
A lot of people feel that, after having numerous toxic work experiences or just being treated, like they're not valuable, just different things that people go through at work, that somehow they process it like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take everything I love, I'm going to monetize it, and I'm going to be an entrepreneur. That is the solution to my problem. Is I don't want to be in a toxic work environment. I just need to work for myself. That is me, myself, and I. Let's do it. So, yeah, I don't even know how I want to say the question. It's basically okay. Let's look at entrepreneurship as a toxic workplace culture all its own. There we go. I'll say it that way. And
Mm.
I'll say finish this sentence. Entrepreneurship is a wonderful thing. I mean, we're two entrepreneurs talking, but
Mhm.
there are some ways that, especially when you're just trying to get the freaking thing off the ground, just trying to get the plane in the air, that's the time when entrepreneurship can feel the most toxic. So, yeah, just kind of talk to some people out there. What tips would you have to give people for when entrepreneurship feels toxic too?
Mm. I think I think that is such a good question. I think it's important to define or identify what toxic means to you,
Hmm.
because there is not, it may not be that there is just some, clear definition, it's cookie cutter, this is toxic. What's toxic for you is what's toxic for me. That may not be true. And
Right,
so there are some things, right? If it's something where it's abusive or, things like that, like, yes, those are cut and dry.
right.
But there are other avenues where the meaning may not be the same across each person. And so, what I would say to someone who, um, one is coming out of a toxic work environment or workplace, and they believe entrepreneurship is their answer, is their silver bullet, is their way out. I would ask them, have you chosen entrepreneurship because you believe that'll make you feel more worthy?
Mm, mhm,
Because if you're going I believe if you're going on a path to become an entrepreneur because you're trying to prove to your bad boss or your whoever that told you you were never going to be more than whatever,
mm,
if you're trying to prove something and you're trying to find worthiness through entrepreneurship, I don't know if you will find that feeling there.
mm,
And what I found is that if you are having feelings of being unworthy, then that's something that that you may be working through that, journey, I don't know, throughout the lifetime. It may not be something that you ever arrive to. I actually believe that as we grow in our purpose, we understand more about ourselves and we all are working on something, no matter whether we are the most successful entrepreneur or we are somewhere in the middle stages of our careers, or we're at the beginning. All of us are still working through something. And so I would say that if you are, if you feel your worthiness has been diminished or you
mm.
have felt valued through the environment or the leader that you've been working with, then do that work to heal. Do
Yes.
that work to heal yourself so that when you enter into entrepreneurship, which can be a beautiful thing and provide freedom and flexibility and give you the opportunity to create generational wealth and so many beautiful things, you're not doing it fueled by something that's going to fall out.
Mm,
Entrepreneurship, if you're feeling unworthy, you're going to deal with rejection. Okay. So if you
yes.
thought you were feeling unworthy before, you are not done with learning the lesson that your worth is invaluable. Like the one thing I don't like that some people say is that you need to charge your worth or they need to pay you your worth. Like, baby, your worth is priceless. You
Yeah.
are invaluable. There's not a number that can accurately reflect your value. But I've heard another coach say it this way: they can pay you your
Yes.
rate
That part.
requirement. And so it's like, when you think about entrepreneurship, if you're trying to feel worthy, then it doesn't matter if you have $1 million offers. If you haven't decided or done the work to understand that you're invaluable, that $1 million offer won't be enough. That $10 million business won't be enough. Your, multi-million dollar, your cars, your planes, your boats, your homes, it will not be enough to resolve what's happening internally. And so you got to do your work, whether you do your work as an employee, an entrepreneur, both. You have to be committed to that journey. And then on the side of toxicity, once you've defined what toxic means, really uphold your boundaries within yourself. Because with an employer, right, it may be, let's say it's work-life balance is one of the struggles as
Yeah.
working as an employee, and your boss calls you on your time off or on your vacations, you never have, actual time for yourself. And
Right.
so then you're like annoyed. You're like, I gotta take my laptop on the vacation. I gotta have my phone ready. And that can absolutely become toxic and unhealthy if you don't set a boundary. But
Right.
an employer can make a call, they can send an email. It's up to you whether or not you respond and when you respond. And so sometimes when you've been in an environment that's lacked boundaries, then it becomes toxic, not because it was, but because you did not have a boundary that you held up. And so even in entrepreneurship, you have to decide what your boundaries will be, what your standards are, and stick to
Amen.
them. Because if you
Yes.
don't, then the thing that you thought was your way out will be your way into something deeper that you have
That
to then
part.
dig out of. It won't be the
Yes.
way out, it'll be what you have to dig out of. And so that's the advice that I would share, on that.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So you see, guys, that boundaries, that B word is coming up again. Even if you're your own boss, you still have to have boundaries. A life without boundaries, toxic things can slip in there, because you're not practicing self-care. You're not taking care of yourself. Everyone should not have access to you all the time. You teach people how to treat you. Even as an entrepreneur, you teach your customers how to treat you. So you got to do a lot of self-reflection and a lot of inner work to be an employee and definitely to be a boss. All right, y'all. So we are wrapping up our discussion on ways to avoid a toxic workplace culture. We covered a lot of ground. We talked about in the workplace itself, and then we even talked about some elements of entrepreneurship as well. What are some things that you would say to people who just came out of? So they did all the steps you mentioned before, and they were not able to come to a resolution, and they just came out of a toxic workplace. And you said some of the advice in another question, but any parting words for how they can prepare their heart and mind so that when they go to a new destination, they don't bring some of that toxic residue with them?
Ooh, this is a good question. Um, so one, I would say, remember that um you're valuable, right?
Yeah.
Like you may not have felt valuable. You may not have felt valued or appreciated or even seen or heard in the last role you were in. That does not diminish what your value really is. So don't equate what how someone else may have treated you to who you really are. because
Yeah.
that's not true. It's not real. Was number one. Number two, I would say get mental health support. So
Yeah.
whether that through a licensed clinical social worker, a therapist, psychologist, could even be a psychiatrist that needs to also assist depending upon the state you're in. I think it's important to create a baseline for what's really going on in your body. So
Mhm.
physically and also mentally as you transition, because sometimes when you're in an environment that's unhealthy, there are things happening that you're not even aware of and that you have not even tended to because you were in such a state of just survival in
Yeah.
this place you were in. So make sure that you are assessing, where you are mentally and physically. You get support for that. Number three, I would say don't lose hope.
Mm.
Don't lose hope because for many who have been in environments that were unhealthy, there can be this feeling that, oh my gosh, ain't nobody gonna treat me right.
Mhm.
They ain't gonna
Yeah.
pay what my rate needs to be. They're gonna be underappreciating me. You could just go into this whole cycle of negativity, and that can
Yeah.
cause you to lose hope. And don't lose hope because there is a place for you. The work that you do is valuable. It's needed and there is a place where you can truly thrive if you don't give up. So
Yeah.
look for those opportunities where as you are clear about your purpose and the vision that you hold for your life and where you want your career to go, align with those desires or those skills that you need to build. Even if your desire long term is entrepreneurship, you got to develop some leadership.
Mm.
And developing leadership means you have to learn how to, have difficult conversations, how to manage people, how to train, how to develop, how to resolve problems, how to do a lot of things that you may or may not have had experience doing depending upon what your
Mhm.
role was. And so many of those things are lifelong growth pieces that you continue to improve on. You don't just arrive, you continue growing. And so I would say, that piece for number three. Number four would just be to get support.
Mm.
Don't do it alone. So whether that's looking for a career coach, a life coach, a coach that maybe specializes in the area that you want to go into next in your career, get somebody that can help you, mentor you. If you can't afford to invest in a coach one-on-one or in a group program, start reading books, listening to podcasts like this that give you access to information that can allow you to think differently about what's available to you in your future, in your work or in your business and in your overall quality of life.
Awesome. 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 That is a great note to end on. And before we get out of here, why don't you let us know anything you're working on and how people can connect with you?
Oh my gosh. So I have books that are available. They're available at my website. If you go to wakeupyourgift.com, www.wakeupyourgift.com, there are books available there, journals. They're also available on Amazon if you search Nikita Lawrence, and you can get connected with me there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. We have enjoyed you and your amazing nuggets of wisdom. And come back and see us anytime you want.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it and have enjoyed the discussion as well.
Thank you. All right, you all. Thank you all for tuning in to the Victorious Living Solutions podcast. Make sure that you stop by and pick up our free quiz. Is this relationship toxic? And you can grab that at victoriousliving solutions.com/toxic. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Keep living victoriously. Bye, everybody.